My name is Maya Negami Hanford. I am a lecturer in Japanese Studies and Modern Languages, Cardiff University. Thank you for coming to the 9th Cardiff Lecture Series, exploring socio-cultural aspects of Japanese language learning. We also would like to say thank you for the Japan Foundation, London, to supporting this lecture series. The purpose of this Cardiff-Japanese Lecture Series is to share contemporary relevant information and to understand cultural context for recognizing the multifaceted aspects of Japanese society in a broader sense. We aim to explore socio-cultural aspects of language learning for those studying Japanese language and culture, as well as various learners, teachers, and researchers with an interest in Japan. The 9th event in the Cardiff-Japanese Lecture Series today, this time with Dr. Nozomi Abe, lecturer at Cardiff University and SOAS University in London, translator, playwright, and theatre maker. Dr. Abe will give us the lecture on being a professional translator, English to Japanese, Japanese to English today. While the talk, you can give us your, while the talk, you can give us your questions regarding the lecture using the Q&A function. Please type the question in the Q&A box. And then after the lecture finishes, we will review these questions. And please do not type your question in that chat box. And also you can upvote other people's question. And also in the webinar, all your microphones will be muted. And this webinar is being recorded, and the recorded session video will be in the Cardiff Japanese Online Lecture Series YouTube channel. And we will be putting a link to you in the chat box later on. And now let me introduce today's lecturer, Nozomi's profile to you. So, Dr. Nozomi Abe studied creative writing under Professor Joe Clifford in Edinburgh and completed her MSc in Translation Studies at the University of Edinburgh and her PhD in Literary Translation at the University of East Anglia. Her work in both Japanese and English is richly varied. Her translation work into Japanese, all performed in Tokyo, includes Mary Stuart, The Orphan Muses, Azure Diamond, Great Expectations, Anna Karenina, La Strada, and The Bodyguard, the musical. She also translates into English, and her works include Roller Trek, the musical, Senpo, the musical, Tenshu Tale, Forbidden, On Air, and The Sun and the Obelisk of the Beast. So, okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Abe, for giving us this opportunity today. Can you hear me, Dr. Abe?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I am going to stop sharing my slide. So can you start sharing your slide, please?
Yes. Could you make me a host again? Sorry, I've probably changed the setting again.
Sorry. Are you sharing it? Are you sharing that now?
Oh, I think the setting has changed. Could you make me a host again, co-host again?
Oh, really?
Yeah, the system. Let me...
Okay, so yeah. Hold on a sec. Make co-host. Sorry. How's that?
Yes. It's magic. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Abe. So when you're ready, you can start the lecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for giving this opportunity to me to talk about this. I'd like to thank Japan Foundation and Cardiff University. It means a lot to me because this topic, being a professional translator, is something I really want to share with my students a lot, but I feel that there's not enough time to do so in the limited teaching time. So it's great to have this time today. Yeah, so as Maya just introduced us, I am a lecturer, but I'm also a practicing translator. And my main area is in theater. So I'm a theater translator. So I translate script into into stage. It's translation from page to stage. Another kind of translation I do is medical translation, which I sort of started by accident, but I'll tell you about it a bit later. Subtitling into English is another thing I do, which I started in the first 2 years of the pandemic. Subtitling is fun. So those are the things I do. But as I said, my main thing is theater translation. And the other day, I think it was 2020, I was in the auditorium of a theater to watch The Bodyguard, the musical, a musical I translated, and it was performed in Osaka. And I was like sitting there. It was 2,000 seaters, massive, huge, massive theater. And I was sort of welling up. I didn't really expect me to get there. This was like my dream to present my translation in a big theater in Osaka or in Tokyo, but it happened. And it seems like some of the dreams come true, and I want the similar thing to happen to you, to students, to everyone. So that's why I'm sharing this today. There's nothing special about me, really. I was born and raised in Japan. My parents spoke a bit of English. My father used to work for a British company based in Kobe. I was raised in Hyogo. So he spoke a bit of sort of business-oriented English. And my mother was, she used to be a flight attendant for Japan Airlines. So I'm sure she was very good at asking people if they want beef or fish, things like that. But they never spoke to me in English when I was a child. And I didn't go to an international school or anything. I just studied English just like everyone else. So there's nothing special about my background, don't think. Anyway, so when we think about translation jobs, possible translation jobs, there are various kinds. As I said, I'm doing a bit of medical translation. It's legal. It's translation of instruction manuals. Or, nowadays there's a translation of SNS contents. If you're working like in-house for a particular company, or if you're translating for a particular project, that's what you do. That's what I have done. There's academic translation. You might translate academic articles. Business translation might be translation of reports or even emails. IT, there's IT translation as well. On the right-hand side, I don't know if, I think you can see the arrows. On the right-hand side, there is the literary translation. That's what I do. It could be prose, poetry, or theater translation. Another fun translation is song translation, which is sometimes included in theater translation. But the fun bit of song translation is when we aim for singable song translation. There's lots of constraints. Subtitling. This is like a growing area, I would say. There are more and more platforms and therefore more needs for subtitling. Video game seems to be very popular among students nowadays. Like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was manga, but nowadays it's video game. And manga, and then there's advertising, very stylistic sort of condensed text to be translated in advertising translation. So it's easy to say like you are looking for a translation job or translation jobs, but there are various kinds of translation and they are all very different from each other. I don't know which one you fancy doing. Is there anything on the list you would like to do in the future? Oh, I included some inspirational quotes as well. Those are the words I got from my grandfather when I told him, when I was 20, and when I told him that I was going to study abroad. And he said, he didn't say it in English. He said, you're sailing to the vast ocean on a tiny boat. but remember, you have a compass in your hand. And as a language learner, like as Dr. Jennifer Coates told us in the previous lecture, once you are a language learner, you are a lifetime language learner. You are still in the journey of lifetime learning. Learning never ends, kind of thing. And I was thinking about it as someone, if you're someone who is trying to find a job in translation, it's just like that, sailing into the vast ocean, because there are so many areas of translation that are very, very different on a tiny boat. But I think having a speciality, choose one or two of those, is like having a compass. You know the direction you're going. It's like having a destination, which you might call a dream or a dream job. The ones listed on the left, for those ones, like being professional translator means being accurate as possible, and you need a certain speed. When you are a freelance translator and get the job from, say, a translation agent, they never give you enough time. They never. So the game is how to speed up the process of translation while you are maintaining the accuracy. The list on the right is a bit different. So being professional in those areas, roughly speaking, is about being creative. There are so much constraints. We cannot put all the information in the original, in the source text. So we have to do what is called transcreation or creative transposition. That's what is needed. So I see translation jobs as like roughly, two different kinds of, I put them in two different kinds of categories. Another thing that is very important when we are a specialist, when we are to become a specialist in translation, is that we need to know what translation is. And I'm sorry if you come to any of my classes, you have seen this before, but I'll repeat it anyways because this is so important. So according to Jacobson, there are three kinds of seeing verbal signs. Number one is intralingual translation. So that's translation within the same language. In the process of translation, we might produce, say, a direct translation, and then we edit it to make it into a professional level. So that's that process is already intralingual translation. Or the example in Japanese would be Genji Monogatari, Tale of Genji. And there are various kinds of intralingual translation into modern Japanese, Gendai Goyaku. That's also called translation in English. Number two, interlingual translation, or what we often call translation proper, is what we normally think about translation. It's from one language into another, from German to Italian, English into Japanese. And when we talk about honyaku in Japanese, this is almost all the time. This is, if not all the time, but in most of the times, this is what we are talking about when we say honyaku, interlingual translation. I think we often talk about translation proper. That's number two. Number three is intersemiotic translation. So translation happens on extra linguistic level. That can be from page to stage. The example I always give is Romeo and Juliet, the ballet. So the text is translated into dance, into dance form, something extra linguistic. So when we say translation, especially in translation studies, we are talking about all those elements. And when we look at some of that, things like advertising, which often includes images, very controlled, stylized images. Video game subtitling has images as well, and theater translation that often includes number 3 intersemiotic translation. Yeah, so one way to look at translation, but in professional world, if we are going to be a professional, an expert in translation, it's very important to remind ourselves that that's what we mean by translation. So moving on to how I became a translator, starting with theater. In terms of theater, they never advertise a theater translator job. I've never seen it. No one is looking for theater translator. It's that narrow, it's such a niche area. And how I became one is that I kept talking about it. I kept telling everyone about what I wanted to do. Like in the beginning, I was studying creative writing, and as a Japanese person, I'm a very shy person, and I don't mind like giving a talk or like teaching in front of students. But if you see me in a different context, I'm rather shy, like a very typical Japanese shy person. But when it comes to what I wanted to do in the future, I was different. I would talk to people, and I would tell people like I would like to work for theater industry, in one way or another. And when I was studying creative writing, one of the, I think I was acting teachers. Yeah, I think she called me. So I went to her office and she said, well, I know you want to work for theater industry in Japan. And there's this one Japanese playwright coming to Glasgow. And back then I was in Edinburgh. And there is one Japanese playwright coming to Glasgow to see Playwright Studio Scotland, which was still new back then. And she said, well, we don't know what to talk about. Would you like to come and join us? And that's how I met this director, who later on gave me my first theater translation job, which is translation of Mhrifysgol. And after getting one, it was easier because then people would introduce me to other theater companies in Japan. So it's a different company who did my English translation of Great Expectations in Tokyo. They also did my Anna Karenina by the same author in a version by Joe Clifford, who taught me creative writing, actually. And after that, I didn't put any photo, but I did La Strada and The Bodyguard, which were produced in like 2000 seaters. And after that, I moved on to translation into English. And then one of my English translation of a contemporary Japanese plays, one of them, was published thanks to Japan Foundation this year, which is an incredible thing. But if we think back, everything started from manifesting what I want to do. And I think it's so useful, especially if you're interested in something like theater or video game or, I don't know, poetry, where they don't advertise, advertise the jobs for translating poetry. I don't think I've seen it before. Yeah, so talking to people about what you want to do is, in general, as well, very important. As for medical and subtitling, I did there's nothing special about it. I just contacted translation agencies. As for medical, I didn't contact any specialist in medical translation, but every now and then I search for Japanese translation jobs in UK, something like that. Just Google it, and then you get a list of translation agencies, and then I contacted them. When I did that, it was just after I finished my PhD, so I changed my title to doctor, and they assumed that I was a medical doctor. And they said, can you do medical translation? And I said, no, I am not a medical doctor, but they sent me the test, like a mini test, a trial test anyways. So I took the test and then passed it. So that's how I started medical translation. Of course, that's not something you can suddenly start without studying about it. So I started studying after getting the job. Sometimes that happens. Medical translation is, a lot of it is about knowing the terms and what is being talked about. So I actually got all the textbooks for medical students and started studying. I still do. Subtitling job is I got, by contacting agencies, but this time I was contacting Japanese translation agencies because I was stuck in Japan during the pandemic. And I thought I'll just buy a magazine on translation. There are 2 or 3 different kinds of magazines in Japan. So I got it. And at the end of the magazine, there's sort of appendix where all the translation agencies in Japan are listed. I think there's 200, but there's so many translation agencies. I circled some, contacted 17 agencies. 3 got back to me. 2 among the 3, 2 said no, 1 said maybe, and after that there was nothing. Even after sending 17 emails, I got nothing. But 1 year later, I don't remember which one, but one of them contacted me and said, would you like to do English subtitles for TV shows and films? And I said yes. So that's kind of how I got a translation job in subtitling. Sorry, going back. It might sound a bit boring, like just manifesting and just contacting translation agencies. There's no magic in it. There's no shortcut. But this is how it happened, how all my translation jobs came, from from one translation experience, another one comes, sort of. So in the beginning, that's what you do. I suppose that's what I did anyways. There are 5 things I wish I knew before getting into this translation industry. And one is Trados. Trados is a computer-assisted translation tool, which is very useful. I wish someone told me 15 years ago. I got it about 3 years ago, again in the beginning of 2 years ago, maybe, during the pandemic, when I was bored to death and when I was stuck in Japan. So computer-assisted translation is different from machine translation. As most of you probably know, machine translation for Japanese and English doesn't work most of the time. I wouldn't say all of the time, but most of the time it doesn't work, especially when I'm dealing with literary translation. We know that it doesn't work. Computer-assisted translation is there's the term base, which suggests expressions, and that way we can tailor-make our translation. I thought that's great. I mean, there was a chance when I was doing MSc in translation studies. I think there were some classes in Trados, but I chose translation of poetry or something. So everyone else did Trados but me, and that's why I didn't get a chance to ever look at it. But for example, these are the kind of things that you translate if you're translating from Japanese into English. Let me see, I can't see it now. EGFR 変異陽性の転移性 NSCLC 患者の一時治療に次のレジメンが追加された。治療選択肢としては、エルロチニブ、ラムシルマブがある。Doesn't this give you a headache? I don't know. How long will it take to translate those 2 sentences? But with Trados, you can register. It's like term-based in Trados is like creating your own mini dictionary. And once your terms are registered, it sort of pops up whenever the word comes up in the source text in the original. So things like EGF, ar-lein, ieithoedd would be in the term base, and say NSCOC would be in the term base. Ichiji first line treatment, that would just automatically come up in the system. Names of agents are a nightmare, but once you register it, you don't have to look it up again for the rest of your life. You just do it once, and the system remembers it. I guess it would be good for legal translation as well. Anything with technical terms, with set translation, would be good. It's something like £650 now, not cheap, but they always do deals, like offer deals. So if you're serious about this kind of translation in this kind of area, that's what I would recommend getting. I wish I had it 10, 15 years ago. Things I wish I knew. Number 2, finding rituals. It's especially about literary translation. I suppose it can be about anything, any kind of work. So there's this thing called golden hours when you can really focus on what you should be doing, and you are super productive in those hours. And for me, it is from 6 in the morning to 8, 2 hours. After focusing on those 2 hours, I think I can do 4-hour, 5-hour work. Finding that, being a translator is a lonely game, really. There's no one else. There's only you and your PC. So it's good to find frame some time. Call that golden hours. Find the best method. Is it Trados? Is it the computer-assisted translation you want to do? Or in some cases, for poetry, you might want to use handwriting, because I feel that I'm using a different part of my brain when I'm handwriting. So when I'm translating theater piece, I never use Trados, because I don't want anyone to suggest anything. I don't want to be, influenced by the possible suggestion. I want to think by myself. It would be different for everyone, but yeah, choosing the method. If you're handwriting, which pen, which notebook, I'm such a geek. Even keyboard, I have a special keyboard. This does the best work, I think. I have 4 different keyboards, but this is the best one. Finding rituals is one key. Number 3, L2 translation. L2 translation is translation into your second language. For me, it is translating into English. For perhaps most of you, it would be into Japanese. This is how I see our lifetime language learning. We gain proficiency in whatever language we are studying, learning, and then we do translation into our own language. And this is what is normally recommended, even at university, even on master's level, if not at SOAS, you are recommended to translate into your own language. For me, it's translating into Japanese. I don't know, probably for you, it is into English. But after that, I would like to emphasize there's L2 translation. Because by doing that, it's super difficult, but by doing that, you learn a lot about both the source language and the target language, the original language and the language of the translation, as well as the culture. This L2 translation was recommended when I was doing my PhD. So it's my world went upside down, but it was a great thing, life-changing decision to translate into English for me. It might sound daunting now if you're still learning the second language, but yeah, keep it in mind that eventually you might be translating into your second language. When you're doing that, when you're translating into your second language, there would be moments where you want to just run into the rain and scream, but I cannot write like native speakers. That's the sort of the wall that we bang ourselves into. But remember, what one of my friends told me, but nobody can be you. Nobody can read the original like you do. You know, when you can do that sort of deeper reading, you can retain what you found in the original into your translation. That's something what native speakers might not be able to do. I talk too much. Number 4, the importance of being geeky, the importance of like researching. Phantom is a production I was helping with, so that was produced in Tokyo. They didn't use my translation, but I was interpreting for the designers that we invited from London. For this piece, we have the original called Phantom by Susan Kay, and there's the Japanese translation of it. And then, of course, there's the Gaston Leroux's original Phantom the Opera. I probably piled up like 20 different books to find out about what the story, the details about the stories in various versions. I went to see the author, Susan Kay, and interviewed her. So like being geeky, I don't think I would be willing to do this much work if I wasn't geeky. So it's geeky is a tricky word, but something you are very passionate about. If you choose something you're very passionate about, then you can do this much research, because translation on professional level is about researching, about getting all the information that you want. When you're a translator, people assume that you know everything somehow. The other day I got a question about a French expression. I don't know why. I'm not a specialist in French or anything, but people assume like English and French and they're similar. Anyways, number 5, aim and target. If you're studying translation now, you of course know this, but translation, when we encounter translation, it's when we are learning a language. Often it's when we are learning a language. So there is translation for the sake of language acquisition. It is to show that you know all the vocabularies, you understand the grammar. That's translation for the sake of language acquisition. On professional level, there is no such thing as like general translation. We always, it's not almost always, it's always have an aim, purpose. Why are we translating? To whom? We're always translating a text for a particular group of people. And that helps us make a decision. Say a sentence or one expression has like 5 different ways to translate. Which one would you choose? Whichever you like, or thinking about your target readers and the purpose, aim of the translation. Say you choose number 2, because you are translating it for your own target readers, for a specific group of people, for a specific purpose, aim. And this, I didn't know about this before. I wish I knew. Right. From here on, I'd like to share some opportunities if you're interested in theater, literary translation. Studying translation or translation studies on university level is one thing. There, at Cardiff we have BA translation, or there are many master's courses in translation studies. That's one way, but you don't have to do it. And after me doing it, it's funny to say, but you don't have to do it. You can always learn in your own ways. And this opportunity number one is if you're interested in theater translation, there's this great theater company called Foreign Affairs based in London. And every year they do like theater translation mentorship. And I joined when they started doing it in the first year. And this is where you learn a lot about intersemiotic translation, the third one on the list that I showed you earlier on. So here I was learning the rhythm of the text, just by clapping the hands, or I shouldn't give it up, but give it away. But we were here and we were learning about the leap in imagination, how much leap we need, how much leap from the original text we need in order to create a performable, playable, singable translation. Number two, sorry, this is also about literary translation, but there's BCLT Summer School, British Centre for Literary Translation has summer school every year. And the next one is in July next year. This is where like the younger published literary translators went. This is the center for, like, literally the center for literary translation in this country, I think. So if you're interested in that, have a look. BCLT also has like workshops and online seminars. I think there's one tomorrow from 3 o'clock. So like checking what they are doing is another thing you can do, because there are some online events as well. If you're a Japanese student, 文化庁新進芸術家海外研修制度。With this program, I was supported for 2 years. This is like for those who are into arts, like for me, it was theater translation. There are some dancers or painters, you can get grant from the Japanese government. And yeah, the next deadline is August. Yeah, have a look. Yeah, it's a, like I was supported for 2 years. It's a great program system. If any of the teachers, lecturers, professors are here watching this, I would like to ask you to, if possible, find an opportunity or opportunities for students to publish their translation. What it means is, like, when I was doing my master's in translation studies, I got a chance to translate one page on the web. I think it was something to do with bilingualism matters, something like that. I mean, we worked together, like there was 3 of us, and we worked together, and with the supervisor made it into a publishable, professional level. And it was published, it was on the web, which, what this means is, like, I could add this one line in my CV. And when I was just starting up, it was a great one line, because it's like, it wasn't like, after finishing a course, I had done anything. I just studied. I have the certificate, but I have no experience in professional translation. It wasn't that. I had this one line, which was great. So I don't know how easy it is to find such opportunities, but if you can, please do it. Do find it for your students. Coming to an end, Mission Possible. So 20 years ago, or I don't know, even 30, I'm 43 now, like 30 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that I would have a book published in English, my English translation published. But, it came true. Another one is, this is my friend, Hiromitsu-san. We studied at East Anglia at the same university, and I think this is his second or third book where his Japanese translation was published. When it comes to literary translation, people often say, adults often say, it's almost impossible to become a literary translator, or it's just 10% of those who want to do it, or even just 1% of those who want to do it will get the job, probably not you. There are a certain number of people who would like to discourage you, but I would like to do the opposite. It's possible. It's happening. Another quote, yeah, I am a translator simply, or I am a literary translator simply because I did not give it up. This is a phrase I got from, I think it was Isabel Wright, a playwright. So the original phrase was, I am a playwright simply because I did not give it up. As simple as that. Yeah, that's it. I talked a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abe. So shall we move on to the question and answer session then? Could you hold a sec? Sorry. Question. Yeah. So we've got a question from Sarah. And if, for example, I wanted to go into medical translation as a profession after graduating, what's the best way to start? Is it better to, in a way, build a portfolio of general medical translation I have done, or should look for agencies? It's something I've been considering, but not too sure where to begin from.
Very good question. Yeah, sort of the both, they like portfolios. They would like, I would assume they would like to see what you have done in the area. I would say do the both like at the same time, like look for agencies. There are many agencies who deal with medical translation. Make a list of it. And it's not contacting, show you what you have done. I would say both. Because I don't think there are enough medical translators. They're always struggling. The agents are always struggling. Don't know if I answered the question.
Thank you, Nozomi. And is there any other questions from anybody? Oh, from Charlie Goa. What was the most time consuming or a difficult area that you translated in?
That would be the area where I was not interested in. One of my, sorry, this might sound a bit silly, but one of my first translation I did, like I got this job from my friend, was to translate an article about a fire-resistant structure of a concrete building. I was not interested at all. I did it anyways, but I struggled, as well as yeah, medical in the beginning, when I had so much information to look for. That was time consuming. I got there eventually. Yeah. Another thing is for some English subtitling, they gave me 84 minutes film to translate into English subtitling, and they gave me 2 days. Impossible. But I didn't say no. The money was good. I didn't want to say no. I did it, but really not a healthy thing to do.
Thank you. So we've got another from Kat. Thanks for the talk. It was very informative. I would like to ask, in reference to subtitle translation, lots of technical skills needed, or how difficult or easy would you say it is?
It's if you the biggest constraint is the character limit or the word limit. If you're translating into English, it would be word limit. If it's into Japanese, it would be character limit. Because when we are subtitling, we say like if you can put 50% of the information in the original, then that's great. You know, the constraint is that strict, but our audience has to follow the plot, because if they lose the plot, they stop watching. So when we can only put 50% of information in our translation, you know, what can we do? how can we keep our audience interested, or how can they keep following the plot? And there are many other rules in each language, so like having the style guide, and yeah, trying it would be like by trying it, I think you learn a lot. But it's about priority, where you put your priority when you can only put 50% of information. Difficult or easy? Depends. Depends on if you really like the original story or not. I mean, I think it would be difficult almost all the time in a very good way.
Thank you, Nozomi. So let's move on to the next one from Josephine. How important is a specific translation degree over degree in your target language? Would you be able to find translation work with a foreign language degree alone or while studying for a translation degree?
I think with your language degree, you can find a translation job. Yeah, I don't think there'll be any problems, but I would say there in some concepts in translation studies, like in theories, translation studies, there are some things that are useful when you're practicing translator, but you don't have to get a degree, but I'd recommend you reading about translation theories.
Okay, so another one from Nathaniel. Hi, I am Nathaniel, a colleague of Nozomi's from Edinburgh days. I'd like to know the name of the Japanese agency previously up on the screen that gives grants to Japanese translators. Hi, Nozomi.
Hi, Nathaniel. Hi. We're still together. It's not an agency, it's a government body, Bunkacho.
Is that the 新進芸術家の絵画研修文化庁?
Yeah.
Shall I put the link in the chat box here then?
Yeah, that would be useful. Yeah.
Is that okay? Can you check whether that's the appropriate link? I'll put that link here, Bunkacho's link here.
I think there was a link. It's just was it the name?
That's the Bunkacho site, link to the Bunkacho site.
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you.
And then there was another one about the summer school. And then can you check whether the link is a correct one or not? I think other audience want to know about that as well.
Sure. Yeah, that's the one. That's up to you. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, they're right here. Okay, so yeah, so Nathaniel, so Nathaniel's questions finished, and then there was another one from our colleague Chris. So Chris.
Yeah, okay, I have two questions, if I may. First one, so when translating Japanese into English, what do you think is the hardest word to translate? Either because the English word doesn't exist in the same way, or maybe the same concept or emotion doesn't exist. So, I mean, it may be that you have more than one word, but let's start with that question. What do you think is the hardest Japanese word to translate into English?
It's setsunasa, akogare.
And why do you find them? Why do you think those ones are difficult?
Setsunasa, I don't find any equivalent word in English. Do you? I mean, it's the same for both. For things like otsukare-sama, tadaima, yoroshiku onegai shimasu. I don't want to see them in my source text.
Excellent. Thank you for that. The other question I have is that, I mean, obviously, I mean, I'm not a translator, but often read translations and discuss issues of translation with students. And quite often when we're doing translations in classes, I will encourage students to do footnotes to either explain why they translated it one way or another, or to provide additional cultural context. Because obviously if they're translating Japanese into English, by default, the reader may not understand much about Japan. That's why they need the translation. So I encourage this, that as a professional translator, like when you do a book, how much opportunity do you ever actually get to do that sort of thing? Do you ever go to the publisher and say, I would like to do this, and they actually say, yes, that's a good idea, or is it always they just want the finished thing?
I am a big fan of footnotes, so I would tell the publisher to include footnotes. And for play text, for theatre, they tend to allow us to use footnotes because that's useful for actors, designers, directors. I think they seem to know. So I had never been rejected by a publisher to use footnotes. I am aware there are a great number of people who hate footnotes. So there's always a big discussion, but I love footnotes. I think it adds a lot to the text. We can't always put everything in the actual body of the translation.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, we've got more and more questions. Oh, that's sorry. Sorry. So there was a question from you, okay? And do you know or have you experienced any sport-related translation job?
I almost got one for the football. When there was a football game, I got an agent contacted me about translating some interviews of a football player or something. But I think they got someone else in the end, almost. But I know I haven't. It's the challenge for that sort of job is the time. They probably give you, I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours. It's that short a time. They have to, put the translation in the news or on the web or whatever. But there's a lot of pressure. If you like that kind of pressure, that would be a fun job to do. And if you're passionate about that sport.
Okay, another one from Kat. Are there any resources on translation practice or theory that you would recommend for someone who would like to improve but isn't able to do a translation degree?
So in terms of theories or articles we read, there is Benuti's Translation Studies Readers. I think that's the title. If I am to pick 2 books, that's the one. And so that's what I think is Translation Studies Readers by Lawrence Venuti. Another one is In Other Words by Mona Baker. That's where you can learn some basics of translation studies. I would say Mona Baker, In Other Words.
Okay, so another one from Charlie, another message from Charlie. Thanks for the talk. It was fascinating.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Charlie. And I'll move on to the next question from Molly. Okay, I'll say, would you consider it useful to start creating a translation portfolio, even if your language level for the source text isn't very high? And then 3 other people upvoted this question.
Right, yeah, okay. It depends on if it's supervised or not. If your translation, it doesn't matter which level you are at, but if your translation is supervised and sort of made it into better quality, then I would say yes. But if your portfolio shows lots of straightforward mistakes, then that would work negatively. So make sure, your translation is checked.
Yeah, so there are more questions from Lisa related to the question about the need for a translation degree. Is having a translation study degree still valuable? I'm a PhD student focusing on subtitling, and I've noticed the degree seems somewhat superfluous when looking for a job. Is it worth it to continue to pass a doctoral degree in translation studies?
Yes and yes. It's not that. It's not because the degree, in itself, degree itself helps you get a job, but what you have learned, in the process of finishing your PhD would help. I think I struggled a lot when I was doing PhD, but I am so glad that I actually finished it. It's this success experience is good in general as well. what I have learned in my PhD is like, well, there are some like theories and things about translation, but it's about doing research, how to get the information you need. I think now I can get most of the information I want. You can do it.
Yeah, so more question. This one from Jack. If you have translated things in the past at an amateur level, like videos or story, what's the best way to organize that into a portfolio to show to an employer or agency?
So if it is related to the job that you're thinking about getting, re-edit it, make sure that it looks nice, and yeah, why not? I think they like your past works, especially when it is related to the job, so the future project or to the job that you are applying for. But yeah, like as I said, if there's like one glaring, simple, straightforward mistake that might affect the like impression on your work, so make sure that you double check, or you ask someone else to have a look as well. Double check, triple check. But yeah, why not share? Because you have done the job.
Okay, so Nathaniel here again. Do you find footnotes interrupt the flow of the reading? I love footnotes too, but I'm often asked to forego including them because of the potential reading flow interruption. The question becomes, how does one include the extra information from the footnote within a translation without a footnote or too much wordliness?
Yeah, it's a big question. It really depends on the text, if it's a text and target readers. You know, who are your target readers? Do they know a lot about Japan, Japanese cultures or not? You know, do they know, is sushi the only thing they know about Japan? I don't know. It depends. For prose, they tend not to put footnotes because they do say it interrupts the flow. Or maybe endnotes is good because footnotes on the same page, I agree, it can be distracting, but maybe you can put them at the end. Yeah, like all the translation books used to do in Japan. Maybe it is like that now, like for the world literature, when they will translate it, they would have like, I don't know, 15 pages of endnotes. Yeah, but really what I can say is depends on the source text and your target readers.
Okay, so from Joey, did you need to read a lot of Scottish history to translate Mary Stuart?
I did, yes, of course. I have read a lot about it, as well as like because the original was Phrifysgol Maria Stuarda. So somehow there's this another text coming in. So I looked at that as well. Yeah, but how Mary Stuart is spelled like differently, like it's different from other spelling of Stuart. And I found the reason her French connections were very important to translate. Religion was very important because between Mary Stuart and Elizabeth I. So yeah, extensive research on the history, which was fun.
Yeah. So lots of you know lots of Scottish history then, Nozomi.
No, I do.
Okay, so we've got only 2 minutes left, so we have to finish this Q&A session. Thank you so much, everybody, for providing your question for Nozomi. That was great. And then and we have to say goodbye, but there are a few more things that I have to tell you. And then the next Cardiff-Japanese Lecture Series is scheduled on 7th of December, and then we are inviting Dr. Abhik Chakrabarti, who works for Wakayama University in Japan, and he's going to give us a lecture titled Landscape History and Challenges for Environmental Sustainability in Protected Areas of Japan, Insights from the North Japan Alps, Shiretoko Peninsula, and Shirakami Mountains. And then that's a webinar is going to start at 12 o'clock in the UK time on Zoom. The event page hasn't been prepared, but we'll let you know when the event page is ready. And also, one sec. And So we would love to have a comment and views on this webinar series. So if you could complete the short survey to tell us how you found this lecture and event, and the survey form will be automatically sent it to you later. And then also please visit our Cardiff Japanese online lecture series YouTube channel when you're bored or something. Okay, so all those previous lecture of the recordings are all in there, but Jennifer one, the previous one, was not uploaded yet, but that would be uploaded in our YouTube channel soon. So please check it out. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody, for coming to our Cardiff Japanese Lecture Series today. And I hope I'll see you next month on the 7th. And until then, please have a nice kind of autumn days. And thank you so much, everybody. So thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.